Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars Rebels episode review. This one's going to be for Season 1, Episode 8, Gathering Forces, which is basically the second part to last week's episode, Empire Day. Because obviously that one ended with a kind of to be continued, and we open up immediately here in the middle of the action. So that was pretty cool. First kind of like two-parter basically of the show so far. I suppose minus the feature-length opening episode, Spark of Rebellion, but yeah, I enjoyed the episode, I really did. Lots of action, reminded me of Rise of the Old Masters a lot, just because it was like focused on the Inquisitor mainly pursuing Ezra and Kanan, and yeah, just regards to their first confrontation, it was very much like, okay, this is our first confrontation, we're going to talk a little bit. And then this one was a lot more about the Inquisitor trying to once again manipulate Ezra and kind of trying to open him up to the dark side a bit, while once again putting down Kanan's skills and stuff like that. So straight away, you have some interesting dynamics going on here just with those characters. But even before then, you had some pretty cool action up in space, just with regards to the Ghost badly outnumbered by the Empire and all the TIE fighters and the Inquisitor, and the shields go down, they think they're going to be killed, and then Sibo comes in and instantly programs the hard drive and stuff like that. And you made on a kind of more this kind of small emotional plot of the episode is just about Sibo knowing stuff about Ezra's parents, but apparently he didn't do enough to help them, and Ezra doesn't want to forgive him, and then it's all about his fear throughout the episode, Ezra's fear about just knowing the truth about what happened to his parents, and ultimately forgiving Sibo for not helping them enough. And I hope we get to see more of Sibo, because it was a little bit kind of like he barely says much in the episode, Sibo. But he kind of does blame himself for what happened to Ezra's parents. Yet he obviously joined the Empire, got the kind of machine on his head and all the information in his head for the purpose of kind of making amends for that. And it's just kind of it's a bit harsh, I think, to blame him for everything. What really could he have done to save them? So I suppose that his whole idea was just that Ezra's emotions, that he wasn't talking about his feelings to anyone. Sabine asked him about stuff, and he didn't even tell her. And just speaking of Sabine briefly, I actually quite liked her a lot in this episode, even more so than her kind of solo episode with Hera. I thought she was a lot better this one, just because you got that kind of caring side to her, rather than her solo episode mainly focused on her saying it was a nightmare over and over again. I used to be a cadet. Trust me, tell me some information, over and over again. But with this one, you really got to see more of that kind of caring side, and that she really wanted to help Ezra through kind of what he was going through. Really wanted him to explore what Sibo knew about his parents. I thought it was cool. And then towards the end of the episode, you get where she gives him the holodisc, and it's the kind of image of him and his family, and it really kind of cheers him up at the end of the episode. So it was just nice to see that kind of more caring side to her. That's a kind of new layer to her character, I suppose. But other than that, yeah, back to the space stuff. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Just they found out that Chopper's been kind of taken out of action. Zeb takes the guns, Sabine takes one of the other guns, and then Ezra's asked to try and repair the hyperdrive, the nav computer, I think it was. Just some nice action going on. You can see just how badly outnumbered they are, and then the main kind of plot of the episode comes from the fact that the Inquisitor plants this hyperdrive tracking beacon on the ship, and they eventually come up with a clever plan that he put the thing on the Phantom, which is obviously attached to the Ghost. So they break off the Phantom in mid-air in mid-hyperdrive from the Ghost, fall out of hyperspace, and lead them back to the planet from episode 6 Out of Darkness, which was the Hera and Sabine episode, which I thought was a really cool continuity moment, just in that oh look, we're close to this spot, we're going to lead them there, and we're going to spring those creatures on them, because me and because Ezra, Kanan says, you know, me and Ezra can use the Force to kind of make them work for us. And it was also kind of Kanan's kind of teaching exercise to kind of have Ezra let go of his fear. So there's some nice continuity as well in the episode just with that. And then they get there, and they really kind of heavily deal with just the fact that Ezra's afraid. Initially, he kind of plays it up as if he's afraid of the monsters and just going into this base. But towards the end, you get that that's not the case. That what's really making him afraid is just knowing the truth about what happened to his parents. Like, if he was to find out that they were alive right now, what would that do to him, because he has been alone for so long? Him being alone and kind of giving up on his parents very early on allowed him to survive. And he almost feels like that would weaken him a little bit if he found out they were alive. I suppose that plays in a little bit with the whole idea of maybe the dark side is beginning to take root in Ezra this episode, because if he finds out his parents are alive, they can be used against him to kind of promote the dark side within him, because obviously that's basically what happened with Anakin. Like, the death of Shmi Skywalker really accelerated Anakin's path down the dark side, and then his emotions over Padme in episode 3 obviously like completed the job. So his parents could be that kind of trigger for Ezra to turn to the dark side. So that's pretty interesting that they kind of set that up already, and Kanan especially seems to be making a big deal about this. Like, Ezra using his anger to get the giant one of these creatures to chase the Inquisitor really kind of shocked Kanan, and then he talks to Hera as like Ezra goes off, and you don't hear what he says to her, so it must be pretty big. So I hope it's maybe something more than just I'm beginning to sense a little bit of the dark side within Ezra, so we have to be careful here. I would hope it's something like more interesting, more kind of revealing than that, than just a simple he seems to be a little bit kind of open to the dark side and stuff like that because of his anger, fear over what happened to his parents. And then Sibo does tell Hera at some point in the episode what the situation is with his parents, and she's going to tell him, but he kind of goes off. So there's still a lot of mysteries kind of set up from this episode, and that's a slight negative I have, just in regards to like there are two key things that they tell us that characters know in the episode, but they don't actually tell us within the episode. Just like, it's been like 2 episodes now that like this guy Sibo knows what happens to Ezra's parents, but he's not going to tell us. They're not going to tell us just yet. Kanan wants to tell Hera something, but we're not going to hear that conversation just yet. But still, the episode was very good, and it does set up an interesting dynamic going forward, and that Kanan may now be hesitant to like train Ezra at certain things in case it kind of accelerates his path to the dark side or stuff like that. He may be wanting to teach him more control over his powers and emotions. But yeah, it was pretty cool. And then the fight scene itself, like with regards to the Inquisitor, I think the fight between like the Inquisitor versus Ezra and Kanan, they're going to get tired fairly quickly if Ezra or Kanan doesn't train and get better. Because right now it's just like the Inquisitor walks in, he's the better swordsman, better using the Force because he's better trained than both of them. And the only reason they can ever escape is because of tricks. And that's a cool dynamic in itself, but at the same time, I would like to see a more even fight between, say, the Inquisitor and Kanan. So I'd like to see like that development go through where Kanan becomes more and more skilled, maybe as he trains Ezra better. Maybe Ezra is so good with the Force that he surpasses Kanan, and he can take on the Inquisitor better or something. Just because if they keep having these confrontations between them with regards to lightsaber fights, and it just keeps going this way, that the Inquisitor always gets the upper hand on Kanan, and there's always a little trick that gets the rebels out of a terrible situation, it's going to become stale fairly quickly. It's already happened 2 times now. The first one is like, okay, that's the first time. Second one, okay, but you're gradually beginning to see that. How wonder like just how is Kanan going to become better at lightsaber combat with no one else around, unless maybe Obi-Wan comes back into the series, trains Kanan a little bit, but we're not really sure. There is the connection from the A New Dawn novel between Kanan and Obi-Wan, and that Kanan, in asking some clever questions as a kind of youngling Padawan, did promote the idea in Obi-Wan's head that the beacon in the Jedi Temple can be used not to warn people to come back, but also to warn people to stay away just in case something bad happens. So there is a setup for some sort of a connection between Obi-Wan and Kanan. I don't think it's much, but I think it's still something like those two characters actually like meeting would make sense, and I'd like it to happen. I think it would be a really strong moment. But yeah, only other thing to talk about in the episode is that Hera goes to meet Fulcrum again to basically give Sibo over to Fulcrum so he can use the information. Now, she still doesn't let Sabine and Zeb see meet the guy. But, you know, they're a bit more okay with it now because of episode 6, but still. Big mysteries there. Maybe it might be Bail Organa, maybe, but I'm not really sure. Who really knows? But it was nice that they did kind of reference him again fairly soon, and I do like that overall, that the series seems to have great continuity, even in like within like a couple of episodes. Like, as I said, episode 6, that Clone Wars place where Fulcrum told him to get some supplies, they use it again in this episode. The last 2 episodes were like a 2-parter, and it kind of references the Rise of Old Master fight and confrontation. Some nice continuity in the series. But so yeah, that's been the review. Definitely in the comments let me know what your thoughts were in the episode. I really enjoyed this episode. That was a kind of big step up from like episode 6. You know, even probably last episode I think it was a lot better. And the only thing I really hope for going on in the series is just that they were a bit more open with regards to characters' pasts, and don't keep everything so mysterious, because the big plus that you have with this kind of group of like new characters, with all of them basically, in a time period that hasn't been touched on at all, is that you can go into their backstories without messing up continuity. Really, you have a lot of interesting characters that you can do whatever you want with, basically. There's no need to like hold back so heavily with this sort of stuff, especially Hera and Sabine. You know, the episode 6, I still stand by that. That was such a waste of like lots of the dialogue in that episode, not revealing anything about their past and stuff like that. So they need to be more open with that. Tell us more stuff about Kanan. Again, a little bit more open about Ezra as well. And I really hope the show uses flashbacks at some point. I think that needs to happen. But yeah, that's been the review. Thanks for watching, and bye.